From fast fashion to luxury couture, European brands have promised to clean up their environmental footprint. But a DW investigation finds that sustainability claims often fail to match reality. Many labels still rely heavily on fossil fuel-based synthetic fibers and overproduction, the core drivers of the industry's environmental damage. Some companies are accused of greenwashing, promoting eco-friendly products without making significant changes to how clothing is sourced, made, or disposed of. Experts say the challenge is structural. High-volume, low-cost production keeps profits up, but makes sustainability goals difficult to meet. Tracking emissions across global supply chains remains complex and costly. The stakes are high. Fashion is responsible for an estimated 8 to 10% of global emissions, more than aviation and shipping combined. Cutting those emissions requires a fundamental shift in how the world produces and consumes clothing. Joining us from Berlin, DW's Chiponda Chimbelu breaks down what these findings mean for the industry and for climate action.
Well, DW and the European Data Journalism Network looked at hundreds of sustainability commitments from several corporate reports, and those were from 17 of the biggest European fashion companies. Now, the results did vary a lot, but on average, the fashion companies have achieved around 50% of the sustainability goals that they set for themselves. A third of them failed to reach their targets, and for the rest, we couldn't figure out whether they had reached the sustainability goals that they had set. Now, overall, that is a mixed picture. And DW did reach out to some of the companies to ask why they were failing to reach their targets. Now, Zalando, which is Europe's biggest online fashion retailer, told us it failed to reach the targets because it had adopted more rigid sustainability product standards, and it revised them last year. Now, that is a trend that we are seeing across the fashion industry, companies revising their sustainability goals or even getting rid of them. Well, whether brands reach their sustainability goals also depends on the number of targets that they have set. Now, for instance, the brands that led in terms of numbers were H&M and Adidas. H&M had 49 sustainability commitments and Adidas had 28. Now, the fact that those two companies did worse than Prada or even Inditex, which owns Zara, doesn't mean that they are doing less for sustainability. It could just mean that they were more ambitious. Now, the challenge for the fashion industry is really in the production of clothes, and it starts with growing and extracting the materials that are needed to make fibers. There is a lot of energy needed to create fabrics too, and of course, there are huge amounts of water and chemicals that are required to do that. The fashion industry is responsible for anything from 2 to 7% of global carbon emissions. So it is responsible for as many carbon emissions as the aviation sector, or even double what the aviation sector is making as carbon emissions. So it is really hard, though, to figure out just how much damaging the fashion industry is to the environment, because it does have a very complex supply chain. And the fact that more and more people are buying clothes online isn't helping. Now, there have been efforts at the EU level to change that, at least through the Bloc's Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive and the Green Claims Directive. But there has been some pushback because there are some policymakers here in the EU who believe that such regulations may be hurting the competitiveness of Europe and European businesses.